When you were a kid, did you ever have a dream? A dream so big and so wild that nothing could ever come between you and what you wanted, no matter the circumstance? No matter the trials and tribulations you had to face in order to make it happen? No matter the consequence that would unfold as a result? Well, today I'm here to share one of my many childhood dreams with you. But this isn't just any one of them. This is the single-handedly biggest one I have ever had. This dream, my dream, is about building some of the fastest creations I can, all while getting to ride them as fast as humanly possible. This dream started when I was just a young child and has enveloped over many years of hibernation deep within myself. My own sort of creative adrenaline-filled relief, if you will. It's also something I have never found the strength to let go of. My vice. So if you enjoy watching ridiculously fast things being built and tested with a small dash of pretty, then you've come to the right place, because today I'm unleashing Project Penny. Project Penny is a drag Banshee I have been progressively building for the past, 10 years or so, and this most recent transformation you're about to see is a complete restoration with a small pile of upgrades, many of which were purchased from Amazon. Why, you ask? Because this is Project Penny, and we're going to take the old saying of how far can you stretch a penny and try to apply it in real time and see how it works. So if this is something that might interest you, then grab your favorite snack and let's get to work. Alright guys, yes, it is time to break out the drag Banshee. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Hope y'all are having a great weekend. Welcome back, Superfast Nation. I am ready to actually do some high horsepower in this video. So, I've been working very hard in the background, trying to get the 350Z going so I can start drifting, trying to get the drag truck going, and I was like, you know what? I should definitely not be impartial to the Yamaha Banshee. That is also one of my drag machines. I haven't had this thing out. Race season is here, basically. You know, everybody's starting to get their stuff dialed in, getting ready, going to events and such. You know, it's like 85 degrees out today, so I was like, dude, this is a great day. I'm gonna start tearing this Banshee apart. We have an aluminum frame in front of us, a ton of parts to install. I wanna clean stuff up. We're probably gonna sandblast that frame down completely. I've got to weld mounts on it, do a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, guys, let's get started with bringing back the 521 drag Banshee build. We're gonna revive this thing right now. Let's get it going. All right, guys, so we have a great deal of work to do. In this video, we have to strip down this entire Yamaha Banshee. This is my 521 Super Cub drag Banshee. For those of you who don't know, it's literally just a bolt-on kit. There's no other modifications, just a timing plate and a bolt-on 521 kit. The cases get trenched for the longer stroke of the crank, and that pretty much gives you your 521. It's got bigger carbs, better reeds, but the cylinders and everything is just a bolt-on kit. No special extra porting or nothing like that. But anyways, that's the basic rundown of my 521 Super Cub drag Banshee. It has a 1 foot extended swing arm with a roundhouse carrier out the back, my favorite. It's a J-arm setup. We keep it a little bit lighter up in the front instead of doing the A-arm stuff. It has hill shooter shocks all around, and this thing is an absolute terror when it's running. I had a problem last year. I went to Jake Sherbrooke's dirt drag event, the Turf Wars up in Minnesota, and we tore the clutch out in the first round. I was having issues with the override transmission on this thing. It just really didn't want to shift through the gears with me shifting it. It kind of just wanted to do its own thing and just kind of like go all over the place. So it'd be like in second, out of second and third and second, and it would just be bouncing around through the gears. So I wound up switching that transmission out. For those of you who follow intensely, I switched that transmission out, stole from my old 472 Super Cub Banshee that I then went to a 392. I took the Pro Mod trans out of that, took the override out of this, put that in here, and this thing makes over 100 horse. So when you let the clutch fly on a Pro Mod transmission, you have to use the clutch. And so even just babying it, I mean, we killed the plates in like, you know, one run flat. So I'm gonna be taking that transmission out of this, going back to the 1 through 5 override with a lockup. I've got to do some work to that transmission. I'd like to touch up some of the porting on this thing, and then I want to put everything on this frame over here. Now this frame is very special. This is an all aluminum drag Banshee frame. As you can see, incredibly light. I actually scored this from a buddy of mine, Garage MC Matt. If you guys don't know him off the top of your head, go check out his YouTube channel. He's been doing quads for years, and he's been really working hard on stepping his content up. So make sure you go check his stuff out. But this aluminum drag Banshee frame is freaking sweet. I mean, I could literally pick this up really easily. So I think we're gonna drop a substantial amount of weight going to the aluminum drag frame. So yeah, we're gonna get all this swapped over. We're gonna have to do some welding on this. We're gonna get this sandblasted, and I'm gonna powder coat this thing. We're gonna do a fresh color on this, except for the plastics. I'm gonna leave the plastics copper because I love the copper look of the on these plastics. So we'll leave that alone. We're gonna swap everything over, clean everything up, get it looking, running great in this video. Alright guys and gals, let's get this Banshee shredded to pieces so we can start the butterfly cocoon process of getting this thing transformed into a beast again. Once we get the entire ATV stripped down to a bare frame, I'll start by sandblasting the aluminum frame. One thing I'd like to note here was I did use a nice, cheap, and semi-useless Harbor Freight sandblaster, which honestly wasn't completely useless as it did remove the paint off of everything except for the frame and handlebars because they were powder coated very well. So I wound up sending those over to my buddies at Northeast Mobile Sandblasting. It's a local to me company in the Nescopeck, Pennsylvania area that does a handful of sandblasting and vapor blasting projects. Everything from side cases and frames all the way up to major stuff like semi-trucks and even most recently a satellite company's radar dishes. They helped me out big time in getting my stuff for the Banshee back down to bare metal, and when you see the finished product, I think you guys will also agree it's definitely worth giving them a call and seeing what they can offer you as well. Sheesh. Okay. Taking the motor out was probably one of the more easier things to do on this Yamaha Banshee. As a lot of you may know, working on Banshees can be simpler, but sometimes time consuming when you get into the nitty-gritty details. So we have to get this motor stripped down. I'm taking everything apart. Probably won't take the cylinders off of the head. I'll probably just pop the cylinders off. But we got to get the cases open, get the crank out. We're going to inspect everything, the cylinders, the reeds, pistons, rings, the whole 9 yards. Last time I bore scoped the cylinders, this thing looked like brand new because I run this a little bit on the rich side. That's where I like to run some of my race bikes. I know a lot of guys are like lean is mean, and it's true, it is. Lean is mean, you get more horsepower that way. But we cracked 100 horse on this running rich, so I'm not really overly concerned about it. I would prefer longevity over them couple extra ponies. We'll do other things like reduce weight or change the fuel type and stuff like that. But anyways, let's go ahead and get this thing torn apart. Let's inspect everything. Let's see where we stand with repairs and getting this thing back on its feet.
Woo! These babies are fried with a capital F. Woo, that is bad, man. Alright guys, check this out. This is the top end after many hours of abuse, and you can see she is still in very good shape. Everything is moving nice and free. Rings are free. Very, very little mating. I call this like mating skids. That's not wear. None of that catches with the fingernail at all. Also, cylinder, you can see similar. It looks very, very clean. This is actually pretty good. You can still see cross hatching in there, which means it didn't even fully seat in properly yet. Yeah, very, very good. You'll see like that's just nastiness from taking it apart, that stuff down there, but there's no pitting or anything in the cylinder heads, which is great. It means we were not experiencing any detonation. And I'm not sure if that's moisture or fuel down in there because I was kicking it over a little bit before I took it apart. But yeah, this actually looks really, really good. Everything rotates nice and free. So I'm not gonna hesitate to reuse everything and put it back together just like this. That's still clean, look at that.
All right, guys, so I may have went just a little above and beyond with this build. I really want this thing to turn out completely different than it was before. I don't want it to be the same 521 drag Banshee that we started with. This thing's got to be completely different from the ground up. Basically, the only thing that I want to keep the same on it is the color of the swing arm and the color of the plastics. Those are the two things that I'm not going to change on this. So with that being said, I did go ahead and tear the head off of the cylinders. I know I said I wasn't going to do that, but you know, I want to make some changes. I want to do a little bit of porting on this thing, open her up a little bit, and also I owe a huge shout out to my buddies over at Northeast Mobile Blasting. They hooked your boy up with some sick vapor blasting on the cases and the cylinder on this 521 Super Cub. They do a lot of everything over there. They have a huge mobile sandblasting unit that they have on a trailer that they can come and sandblast your stuff. They have vapor blasting there in-house. I will list the contact information both in the description and right here on the screen for y'all. And I'm gonna show some really nice close-up shots of their work because this thing turned out incredible. And I decided, instead of polishing everything and having like that upkeep and maintenance, that I am going to powder coat the cases as well as the cylinder on this mono cylinder on the 521 Super Cub. So with that being said, make sure you guys check out Northeast Mobile Blasting because man, they did such a killer job on this. I highly recommend their work. If you're looking for something in the Pennsylvania area, highly recommend you check them out, guys. So with that being said, let's move on with the rest of the build here. Let's talk about the transmission and what we found with the transmission.
All right, guys, so this was one of the big issues with my 521 Super Cub fully override transmission. It's a 1 through 5 setup. You can see these teeth on this one gear here are worn down significantly. They're rounded off. They should not be straight on an override, straight up and down. That's only an OEM setup. Once you go override, they cut the corner of these off so that they mesh with the next gear a lot smoother. And what I'm going to do is make them look more like that, where it's a nice flat edge again. Probably take this down right to the corner of the next one here, a little bit more ramp on it. And I'll make sure they match the other gear as well. Those ones actually match with this one here. And then also the springs for this shaft are very weak, to the point where when you'd flick the gear, because there's two springs right here, when you flick the gear down, it wouldn't come back up. It would literally stay compressed. So this spring is really weak, and this one's not so bad, but you can tell that this one is much weaker than this one. So I'm going to get two matching springs, equal lengths, down at the local hardware store. They just slip right over the shaft here like this. And then those are what help that gear float in between the gear set with the shift fork. And that's probably also why we were wearing down the edges on these forks so much. You can tell these forks are pretty much shot out. Those grooves right there, that's a big no-no. That will allow the gears to kind of move a little bit, which could make them jump in, and that might be why we were experiencing this.
All right, guys, and now that we got the transmission stuff out of the way, there was one other thing I'm going to upgrade on this. I'm going to do straight cut gears, but unfortunately, Panthera Motorsports, I think I'm saying that correctly, Panthera Motorsports, they didn't have the gears in stock until July. I didn't want to wait 3-4 months to get those straight cut gears in, so I asked for a refund. So unfortunately, I didn't want to wait that long to get the gears in. I have to go reorder those from somewhere else, most likely going to be Redline Racing. There's also a couple other little upgrades I want to do. I got some billet bowls, but they sent me black ones instead of the fine machine finish. They're from Cherry Performance. So I'm probably going to send those back for the fine machine finish because I want certain things to pop on this bike, and black's not going to do it justice, and nothing else on the bike's going to be black at this point. Even the side covers and everything, we're changing everything out and going powder coat on everything. So I want this thing to like really be kind of a show quality race bike, except for the plastics because they're still kind of rough. So the crank seems to be in phenomenal shape, so I'm not going to change anything with the crank. I'm going to clean everything out really well, and then after I'm done powder coating and I reassemble, I'm going to make sure I lubricate everything really well. We're going to do a little bit of porting on the cylinders. I'm also putting a drag clutch in this thing. Last time I was running a Tusk clutch. I spent the extra money and got a drag setup for this thing, so we're going to be putting that in as well, some tighter springs. It's already got a lockup. And then also the 39mm carburetors, they will have the oversized float bowls. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to add a power jet to the carburetors because I'm changing the fuel type for this. I'm not going to run race fuel anymore. I'm going to actually change to E85. I thought about methanol, I thought about alcohol, I thought about E85 and race fuel, and I think E85 is my safest, best bet. We will gain a little bit of horsepower, use a little bit more fuel, and be a ton safer on this thing to run that much longer. So with that being said, let's move on to the next piece of the build, which is getting this cylinder ported and getting this stuff powder coated and ready for reassembly.
One other thing I wanted to show you guys real quick was the shifter shafts that the forks ride on. You can see the line in the middle here. I actually finely micro polished this thing with a 2000 grit, whatever you want to call this block, sanding block, if you will. But you can see how shiny and smooth that is now compared to this other side. So I'm just cleaning up these things. The shift forks were moving kind of rough on this rod. Even with a little bit of oil on it, it was still kind of like tight, and there was no burrs or anything on it. So I was like, well, we're just going to give this thing a quick micro polish, and that ought to also help with some of the shifting. So when these things are really moving high RPM, everything's got to be operating just right.
Alright guys, the next step for this now turned frame up build is we're going to do some transfer porting to help this 521 breathe easy. So what we have to do is some old school gasket matching with the base gasket to both the upper case half as well as the bottom of the cylinder. While I'm in there with the porting tool, I will also clean up some of the casting flaws on the intake and transfer ports, and also polish up the exhaust a little bit for some better exhaust flow with a lot less turbulence.
Alright guys, and this is what the cases should look like when they're done. I'm not a pro builder, so keep that in mind. I'm a guy that does this in his backyard, but I don't know how good of a shot you guys can see in here, but man, from transition from cylinder to case is super smooth now. There's no ridge in between here. And so this stuff will travel, the air and fuel mix now will travel through these transfer ports at a much greater velocity. And so that will definitely give us a few ponies there. And also I polished up this exhaust a little bit, nothing crazy. You can still see some sanding marks, but I did polish it by hand, and it is like glassy smooth, but you can see some of the imperfections there. I ran out of higher grit sandpaper, but overall I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. The camera doesn't really do it justice. It's pretty dang shiny in person, and I'm happy with it. It'll run phenomenal. This was all carbonated up, by the way, too, because of all the casting flaws on the inside. So once we got that cleaned up, this will actually help the air and fuel go back and forth through the exhaust a lot more efficiently and effectively. So we also brushed up the intakes a little bit and got those not glossy smooth. You're not supposed to do that on the intake because roughness helps atomize the fuel and air mix, so you have to leave that you know, semi-rough on a carbureted machine. Now, if we were talking fuel injection, then you could get away with not sanding or actually polishing that smooth. And then because the fuel injector itself has a spray pattern, and that is atomizing the fuel and air for you. So anyways, with that being said, let's go ahead and continue on.
While we're at it, we may as well clean up these side cases since I'm tired of cleaning up transmission fluid off of my garage floor, because the threads on these cases are so far gone from the many years of abuse and removal. Let's start by grinding these threads out so we can refill them with fresh weld. Then I'll file them flush and check them with a straight edge before drilling and tapping brandy new threads. Let's go! Alright guys, so now that we got all of our transmission issues worked out, we've got the cases stripped and prepared for powder coating. They are repaired, ready to go. Now we can work on getting the frame ready. There's a few things outside of sandblasting we have to do in order to get this ready for powder coat. I went through, I checked all the mounts on this, make sure this has, you know, all the mounting for the plastics, you know, a traditional steering stem with a bearing and everything. So this is pretty much ready to go. We just have to add a couple little things. I have some pipe and some plate right here next to me. This is a, I believe, 1 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch wall aluminum tube. This is a little difficult to find. Actually, I got this on Amazon, so it wasn't that bad. But I tried to get the thickest wall that I could, so that, because this is actually going to be the top J-arm mount. This is a drag style frame. So if you look very closely, there's no upper mount for the J-arm. And so we're going to add that. We're going to custom make slits in this to kind of mold that into the frame, and then make some brackets out of this 1/4 inch thick aluminum plate to hang the J-arm off of. It has the shock mount because this was a strut style drag frame where you would just run solid struts down to the A-arms. And while that works for some drag racers, I actually just want the regular hill shooter suspension that I already have. I don't want to do a rigid frame. As you get older, you start to enjoy some of the comforts like having a full suspension. And the other thing is, this bike doesn't only drag race, it also is a hill climb bike. So I do want a little suspension give there just in case, because then we can always put struts on this later if we want to do something like a rigid chassis and just leave the upper J-arm in place. So with that being said, we're going to add these in some plates, get this thing gusseted, get it ready to go so that we can get powder coating all of this stuff. And then I also still have to strip the covers for the side of the motor. The stator cover, I got a aluminum one, I think it's cast aluminum, looks like cast aluminum, from Garage MC Matt. Thank you, bro, appreciate you. Guys, go look him up. He's been hooking your boy up with some stuff for this nasty drag build we're taking care of. So, the clutch cover's also gotta get sandblasted, and then all that stuff's gonna get powder coated. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get started with the work. All right, guys, so check it out. Rocking and rolling here on this build. Got my Banshee Joe's shirt. Thanks, Joe, for the shirt. I appreciate it. Saw him down at a Motorama show earlier this year. But yeah, guys, let's get back to the build here. This is becoming quite a chore. Looking this frame over after I got the front bumper mounted, there's so many modifications that need to be done to this frame. I started to mount the engine into position. I've got the 2 bottom bolts in the bottom of the cases here, and I've got everything just sitting there so I can get an idea like where pipes are gonna lay. And I noticed there's actually some engine mounts missing off of this frame. There's none in the front here to tie this front engine mount into the frame, and then both also in the back here, they're also missing the motor mounts for back here also. So, like, I don't even know if this chain's going to align. So now what we have to get into is basically we're gonna have to strip down the rest of the other 521 Banshee, and I need the front end stuff off of it because this steering stem setup is not gonna work with my steering on the 521 Banshee, so we have to custom make something for that. We have to cut off the inner A-arm mounts for the lower A-arm, and then we need to create one for the upper J-arm, and we have to put the swing arm on and make sure that the chain's gonna be aligned perfectly. That's a big one, guys, because when you're making serious ponies, these chains gotta be perfectly aligned. You can't have them clicking or slapping or doing other retarded things. It'll kill bearings and bushings and other things really, really fast. So let's take a minute. We're gonna tear the rest of the 521 apart, and we're gonna start mocking up this frame. All right, guys, let's get this thing cracking. Alright guys, let's start by rearranging the lower A-arm mounts so we can fit the stock style lowers to keep the hill shooter suspension. Once we get these cut off, I will attach the lower A-arm and tack weld the flanges back into position before laying a final bead on them. While I had the flanges off, I traced out a template to cut 4 more just like it, so I could have the same style to use for the upper JR mount we are about to create. Once I got those made, I cut them out using a hole saw bit and a grinder. Once done, I moved right on to cutting out the upper pipes to hold the JR mounts into place. I want to note here that it was extremely hard to get these pipes to fit without a gap, so I did wind up welding an aluminum gap, which was by far one of the hardest portions of this build. I had to make sure it would be strong so it's not dangerous while racing. Alright guys, so at this point in the video, you guys are probably wondering why I'm taking so much time and effort to go from the OEM steel frame, which is a good bit stronger than aluminum, and going to this aluminum chassis that is a little bit more brittle. You know, aluminum's a little more brittle, it's a little more softer of a material than steel, but the weight savings is where things really come into play. Let's take a second, let's talk about the frame. The original steel frame on this 1989 J-arm Yamaha Banshee is in the 43 pound range, whereas this aluminum frame with no modifications done to it is about 20 to 21 pounds. So we are saving 22 to 23 pounds in total, cutting the frame weight literally in half. So we are saving a great amount of weight. That is about 10% of the bike's weight. I haven't done a full weigh down of this bike yet, but it should be around the 260, 280 pound range with all of the things taking off of it from the factory, because I think these were around the 350 pound range from the factory, if I'm not mistaken. So with all the upgrades and things removed off of this, we should be around the 260 to 280 range. I will weigh this though at some point and get you guys a final figure, but for the purposes of this video, we are dropping around 8 to 10% of the weight in total, which is a really great weight savings. And I think that's worth it in my opinion. I myself also have gained a couple pounds over the last year. Last time I raced this Banshee, I was around 210 pounds. I'm now about 240. So literally the weight that we're losing, I gained. I plan on doing a driver mod and taking some weight off here, cutting down in the next few weeks because I've been on a bulk cycle for like 6 months, trying to put on some muscle. So with that being said, I think this thing's gonna turn out great. I think this thing's gonna be a ripper. If I can drop another 20 or 30 pounds on top of it, this thing, we could like really send this thing to the moon. So anyways, let's get back to the build.
The next thing we need to take care of is the rear subframe. There's no seat mount, no place to hang silencers or rear fenders, and no way to latch a seat. I have some spare solid aluminum stock 1-inch in outer diameter tubing. I'm going to use that and some of the 1/4-inch plating to make a box for the seat latch. Let's get it done. Alright guys, this is what I came up with for the back of this aluminum frame. Amazingness, I'll call it. I actually really like the way this is turning out. Everything's fitting in the factory locations. Great. Let's take a look at this thing real quick. So before we continue on, I really wanted to show you guys the design back here. This is what I came up with to kind of mimic the factory design of how the plastics bolt on. They go in these little holes back here. The seat latches onto the back. I'll show you guys some close-up pictures of this. I also did a couple mounts for the grab bar back here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I think we're going to reroute the exhaust in the... Ow, don't touch that. It's hot. Oh, God, that hurt. I just got done welding this. So I think what we're going to do for the back is run the 2 silencers right up in the middle here. I've debated on cutting and turning the pipes and routing them out of the frame to gain a little bit more horsepower, but I don't think I'm ready to do that just yet. So I'm going to mount them in the center, which I think would be really cool. I'm going to figure out how to get those mounted in the center. And we still have to make the mounts for the engine yet and then line the sprocket up. So I'll get that back up on the table, bolt that all up, so that way our geometry is square. And then we got to start making the mounts for the engine. Once the engine mounts are done, I can then send this frame off. Oh my God, I'm like tripping over everything. Once I make the engine mounts for this thing, I can then send this over to my boys at Northeast Mobile Sandblasting. They're going to take care of this frame for me real quick. And then we can get this thing powder coated and into the big oven over there. That's where I'm at this moment in time. I'm going to be finishing this up before the end of the video, and we are going to be doing some testing and tuning on this thing, trying to get this thing dialed in, because I want to go out and do some crazy racing with this thing this year. So let's go ahead and get this thing finished up. Alright guys, the next step before we can send this out the door is we need to get the engine mounted properly and in a way that removal won't be so bad, and also while making sure the sprocket stays aligned properly. I personally love the old school method of using a string or a rope to run across the sprockets, but be aware, this isn't for the faint of heart. They make really cheap Amazon laser equipment now that can do pretty precise jobs very well. Once I get everything aligned well enough, I'll start cutting out the mounts and get those welded into place too. Many test fits were done, but no engine cases were hurt in the production of this drag Banshee, I promise you. While we are at it, and even though I don't fully believe you need brakes anyways, I decided to fab up a place for the back brake lever and also the brake reservoir as well. I also needed to create a custom swing arm bolt, so I took 2 OEM bolts and cut them to fit one desired length, then TIG welded them together. Finally time to move on.
Alright guys, let's keep this pretty short, sweet, and simple. Powder coating can be a little bit on the simpler side of things. It's just the prep work that goes into it can be very time intensive. You have to clean the parts. Supposed to be bare metal. So if you're taking it to a place and they're applying it over a coating without your knowledge, that's not the standard practice for powder coating. You are supposed to have these taken down to bare metal. I have my stator cover and clutch cover over here to my right. As you can see, bare aluminum. It looks like cast aluminum almost, because when we glass beaded it with the sandblaster, it leaves these tiny little imperfections that you can barely see, but the surface becomes a little on the rougher side. So highly recommend, if you're keeping this polished aluminum, don't sandblast it. Only do that if you're gonna powder coat. Now, I chose 2 different copper colors for the 521 drag Banshee build. I chose Monaco copper and a transparent copper, both off of Prismatic Powder's website. I'll drop you guys a link. This is not a paid advertisement or anything like that. This is literally just because I love their product so much. I'm gonna give you guys a little inside scoop. I just use a Harbor Freight, $65 unit to apply it. After I'm done sandblasting the covers, I then will clean them off with acetone. I will blow them off with air, and then I will start applying my powder coat. Now, this is a 2-stage powder coat to get this to look really, really the depth that you're looking to get that nice candy or pearl or like that sheen or shine behind it. The first stage, Prismatic Powders recommends, is doing a Super Chrome 2+ as your base coat. You have to fully cure Super Chrome before you can put another coating on it. So we'll run that 18 minutes at 375 in the oven, and then we'll bring that back out. And while it's still pretty warm, not hot, fresh hot, but like I'll let it cool down for like 5-10 minutes so I can actually pick it up without burning my hands. And then I will apply the second layer while it's hot, because it's much easier to apply when it's hot, in my opinion. And I think we're gonna do these ones in transparent, because that's the brighter copper color, and then we'll see what they look like when they're done. Now, normally I wear a mask when I apply this, right? The only issue today is I left my mask at Cameraman Wes's last night when I was painting a truck. So unfortunately, I have no choice but to raw dog it on this one. And I know I'm gonna get yelled at in the comments for not being safe, but sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do for the passion that you have. So this is pretty simple. You just have a ground wire here. I'm gonna try not to touch the piece. You click your pedal, that puts your static electricity through the piece. And then basically, you just coat this sucker. But that's it, guys. That's what it looks like. And then wait till you see what this looks like when it's done. It looks super trick. It comes out way different than the actual powder. So let's go ahead and get the rest of these covers done quick, and then we'll get these things baking and we'll get the final look at the transparent copper. All right, guys, let's take a look at the final product of the transparent copper from Prismatic Powders. Now, I do not claim to be a professional, but I do think that this looks phenomenal. This is my favorite piece out of all the other ones. I think this one just really has that depth and that sheen to it. This is the transparent copper with a super chrome base. And man, just look at that deep candy copper look to it. Oh God, it's so rich and creamy looking. I love it, guys. I love it. And you can see like little imperfections in the super chrome underneath there, which I'm not exactly sure how to get rid of that. I turned the air down all the way, but honestly, that actually looks kind of cool. And it may even match the plastics on the Banshee, because they also have little imperfections underneath them also. So yeah, I don't know. Drop me a comment below. Let me know what you think. This looks, actually, it looks just as good in person as it does on camera. Man, I love it. Yeah, let's go, baby. Let's go. Sheesh. So yeah, guys, check it out. I have everything taken apart. The frame is fully modified and ready to go. We have to get this stripped at my boys, Northeast Mobile Sandblasting. They're going to strip this down to bare aluminum so I can fit this in the powder coating schedule for next week. I have all the rest of the parts that I'd like to powder coat on this Banshee. The engine cases, the steering stem, all the wheel hubs, the rear axle, the nuts, and then also the sprocket hub and the brake lever and the rotor hub. So guys, that is a complete rundown of what we're going to be powder coating on this. There's a lot of other things that are involved behind this build. That is why it is taking me so long to produce this video. But I appreciate y'all sticking around, and this thing ought to be really epic when it's done. And you know, I know there's going to be some hate around the modifications to my aluminum drag frame. However, I'm a builder and I like to do things to my style of building. So I know that can be a little hectic at times, and it may not be what everybody wants at the same time, but you know, modifying this so that it is super lightweight and still has the stock appearing look to it, other than it being stretched with some bigger wheels in the back, this for the most part will look more towards a stock Banshee, which in my opinion will give it a little bit more of a sleeper look. So yeah, we might have like an extra 10, 15 pounds of running equipment up in the front of this ATV. I will also reduce that in the rear end at some point by putting a titanium swing arm as well as an aluminum drag axle on this thing. Won't do that for this video because I just don't have the time to go source all of that stuff and keep postponing the production of this video. So with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and get all this stripped down, and then we'll get this all powder coated and finally start assembling this bad mamma jamma. Let's get it. Alright guys, and it's time for final powder coating of all of the parts. I'll start by doing all of them in the Super Chrome Plus. Once cured, we can start separating the accent colors. I would like to note here, I had a bit of trouble getting the Monaco copper to stick well enough to my pieces. So I wound up doing everything in transparent copper first, then applied a candy gold over my accent colors, which I think came out pretty darn good for a mistake turned good. You guys need to drop me a comment when this video is done and let me know what y'all think of the finished product. Alright guys, check it out. We actually just got the frame and handlebars back from the Sandblaster. Let's check it out. Let's see what this thing looks like before we get it into the powder coating stage. Alright guys, so we took some quick looks at the engine cases and all the little bits and pieces that I'm powder coating for the chassis. And then we have this guy over here. Check this out. Now, I just got done welding. I did not film the couple little pieces. I added 2 braces there. I added caps on the ends for the drag pipes, and then also welded the backside of this a little bit. So that way, it looks like they had an issue with this breaking at some point, because I can see some mend points where these tubes split, I think, and then they broke. So I added bracing to hopefully kind of rigidize, if that's even a word. Don't Google it because I don't think it is. But to kind of like make this a little bit more rigid and sturdy so that there's no flex or movement, I put these braces in literally 5 minutes ago, added the caps, welded and I also welded the bottoms of the pegs because I don't want any of this to be removable. There's no need for taking any of this apart. The engine will come in and out from the side. I already tested this when I was putting all the things in, all the brackets and stuff in. But yeah, I think this looks cool, man. Check this out. Northeast Sandblasting, they did a great job. Link in the description below. It's kind of glittery looking. They can make this real smooth if you need it. They can do what they call mending the surface with different types of grits. I wanted it a little rougher so that the powder coat would stick to it really, really good, because sometimes I have issues with aluminum getting the powder coat to stick. But I think this looks great. I'm really, really happy. And let's get this thing in the oven so that we can finally get the Banshee together and get some yard rips going. Let's go, guys. All right, guys, so we got everything together, laid out here in perfect fashion. This took me forever to line everything up. Everything's powder coated. Everything's pretty much cleaned up for the most part. There's a couple things I'll clean up as I go, polishing aluminum and certain things like that. But yeah, we're pretty much ready to put this 521 beast back together. There's not too much more to say than that. I've got a lot of aftermarket parts going into this thing. I'll talk about them as we go, but take a look at everything laid out here. I've got some straight cut gears over there. I went through and powder coated a bunch of things, all the hubs, the rear axle, you know, even the sprocket. I got new chains for it, you know, all new seals, bearings. I redid the ball joint boots on the upper and lower A-arm, J-arm setup. New bearings in the hub assemblies. I got bigger oversized float bowls for the carburetors, power jets, a different thumb throttle that will allow me to throw the entire carburetor slides open pretty much. It's a special throttle. Yeah, just so much stuff going on here, guys. Brand new tires for the back. I got the Sun F Snow Pro generic lookalikes. I think they'll do pretty good. I talked to a couple guys. They like how they run. Brand new drag clutch. And yeah, guys, so that pretty much sums up what we got going on here for the 521 Super Cub build. We got the CPI out of frames also. I forgot to mention those. Very excited to hear what this crazy four-wheeler is going to sound like when it's done. So guys, without further ado, let's get assembling this thing so we can get a final look at the 521 Super Cub.
All right, guys, so before I could put this together, I had to test the transmission on this because it has absolutely been the biggest nightmare of this entire build. So I went through, I put my new springs in that I ordered from Amazon, both top and bottom. And I'll tell you what, I mean, this thing's in 6th gear right now, and it rotates really, really free. So I have all the confidence in the world that we shouldn't have any more transmission issues going forward with this thing. Also, I'm not letting Cameraman Wes ride this thing ever again. Sorry, bro, but you ain't riding the drag Banshee. You could ride the trail Banshee once we get that going because, guys, I don't want to have any more issues with this thing going forward. So without further ado, let's get this thing together. We'll get a first start and we'll get a first ride in this.
And guess what? It's time for final assembly. Let's get this drag beast put together so we can fire it up and go toss some dirt around my neighbor's field. This was a really fun build and definitely a first true ground up build where no stone was unturned in making sure this came out extremely nice when completed. Since I already know what this thing looks like when it's done, I just want to say thank you. If you've stuck it out with me this far, I really think it was worth the time to see it through to the end. Both the mental and physical attributes of this build started to take extreme shape throughout these last few steps of assembly. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this just as much as I did creating it for everyone. I will link a full playlist in the description below and my comment below if you guys want to see where this drag Banshee started from and how it came to be what it is in this video today. Now, let's get back to the show. what y'all think? She sound good or what? Them CPI out-of-frame drag pipes. All right, guys, before we can take this thing out and start thrashing on it, we have to give it a first start. Let's see if she'll run. That's what I'm talking about. Woo! Let's go tear this thing up. I actually drove, I think it was 8 hours each way to somewhere Denton, North Carolina. I appreciate the guy I bought the pipes off of. He gave me a killer deal for driving that distance for these out-of-frame drag pipes. I love CPI pipes in general, let alone the out-of-frames. They look and sound incredible. For a used set, I think I paid like 300 bucks for those, which is an incredible deal for those. Guys, I think this thing turned out great. This is a Banshee that I have been wanting to build for a pile of years. Now, I know I had the drag Banshee already, but it just really wasn't in this type of more show drag style quality with everything, literally no detail untouched on this entire drag build. I went through, I repolished everything, powder coated literally everything that was not painted or powder coated on this thing. And even if it was painted, I went through and stripped everything and redid everything anyways. So, you know, we got the Sun F tires in the back. They are basically a Snow Pro knockoff. I think those will do good since I can't find any Cheetah L7s, which is what I want to run on this, but I cannot find them. So these are a good second option. They're very budget friendly. I think they were $120 for the pair on Amazon, shipped to my place. They should hook great for this thing with the, I think it's a 14-inch extended swing arm in this. I haven't measured it, and I never really cared to know exactly how long it was. I just know the thing hooks like a sumbitch. So yeah, guys, I don't know. You tell me what you think in the comments below. I left no stone unturned on this build. I've got the H&N throttle assembly, not an advertisement. I was not sponsored on anything on this build. Everything is out of pocket, and all the work is done by yours truly. But we got the H&N throttle assembly. There's no backstop on that like the OEM ones. So literally, you can throw the throttle all the way open on that. You've got the Driveline Performance 8-plate lockup clutch. So yeah, guys, I decided to reuse the Kean 39mm carburetors. A little unhappy with the Chariot billet bowls. They were supposed to be billet aluminum, not black. It says on the eBay ad, they are supposed to be billet aluminum. I left them a message. I never got a response because I paid for those and they don't know who I am through the eBay app. And I literally never got a response from them. So that's terrible customer support. A little unhappy with that. But other than that, I think everything came out great. Really stoked to see if this thing will do some third gear wheelies across the yard. I asked my neighbor if I could borrow his backyard there. He's got a like 4-acre stretch over there where I can really open this thing up. So let's go ahead and get this thing going. Let's see what she'll do.
It was always me versus me. It was never me versus you. Misunderstood. Get up, had to beat those eyes. Got up and I beat those eyes. It's understood. It was always me versus me.
But the steering is a little wonky on it. Transmission shifting feels amazing. We're gonna put it under load here. But the steering on this thing, it kind of does like a little bit of this. It wants to like pull.
So I have to play with that a little bit yet. I'm hoping it's not the position of the upper J-arm because I can't really change that now. But I'm gonna do a couple warm-ups first. Funny. You're so hilarious. He's funny.